Good afternoon. I'm Alan Unell, and this series of videos is Healthcare Advocacy, where we address problems in the healthcare system and then try to take actions to make a better system for all of us. Before I get started, we're going to talk about a recent advance in cancer, and we're going to talk about states that ban abortion. Those are the big topics today. Before we get to that, down below in the YouTube description box, you'll see a link to the Healthcare Advocacy newsletter that is the text for this video. It has all the references, the medical references, the news reports. It has all the background material and links there. And of course, you can subscribe for free and get this stuff delivered to your inbox almost every day. Also has tons of references on what to do in case your medical claim is denied, what happens if you need an abortion, what happens if you can't pay for that abortion. There are all kinds of references in there. And you can subscribe to any number of pro-democracy and pro-universal healthcare groups down there. Okay, let's get started. I want to talk about cancer research going on in Korea. Now, I was trained to be a mathematician, and a lot of new mathematics comes about just because you sit at your desk and you plug away at it. But the best mathematics comes when you have completely new insights. Sometimes it's you have information in one field and information in another field, and you put them together and bang, you've discovered something new. Well, that's kind of what's going on in South Korea with cancer, and it's pretty exciting. Now, despite the development of numerous cancer treatment technologies, the common goal of most current cancer therapies is to eliminate, kill the cancer cells. This approach faces fundamental limitations, including cancer cells developing resistance and returning, as well as severe side effects from the destruction of healthy cells nearby the cancer cells. A South Korean research team at the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, KAIST, focused on the observation that during oncogenesis, that's the creation of cancer cells, normal cells regress along their differentiation trajectory. Differentiation means changing. Anyway, building on this insight, they developed a technology to create a digital twin of the gene network associated with this differentiation trajectory of normal cells. Through simulation analysis, the team systematically identified master molecular switches that induce normal cell differentiation. When these switches were applied to colon cancer cells, the cancer cells reverted to a normal-like state. This was a result that was confirmed through molecular and cellular experiments, as well as animal studies. So they actually checked on the real thing. This research demonstrates that cancer cell reversion can systematically be achieved by analyzing and utilizing the digital twin of the cancer cell gene network rather than just relying on serendipitous discovery. The findings hold significant promise for developing reversible cancer therapies that can be applied to a wide variety of types of cancer. You can read more about it in the newsletter. There's a link to the Korean Institute's report. Let's talk about abortion bans because they have very real consequences. In states with abortion bans, ProPublica is doing research. They found pregnant women have bled to death, succumbed to fatal infections, and wound up in the morgue dead with what medical examiners recorded were products of conception still in their body. These are the very kinds of cases state maternal mortality review committees were set up to delve into and determine why they happen and how to stop them from happening. Because in this country, we have a maternal mortality problem. Maternal mortality in this country is sky high. Really high. It's between 20 and 30 deaths per, I think 100,000 live births. And if you're black, it's almost 50. And if you look in our peer-reviewed, peer nation industrialized countries, it's like 4 deaths or 8 deaths. So it's not good in the U.S. Anyway, so these states are supposed to examine this in these panels. But the panels in states that have recently imposed strict bans on abortion have done little to uncover whether the abortion bans are actually contributing to maternal deaths, including tracking delays in care for pregnancy complications and making these problems known. This is what the ProPublica investigation showed. In fact, they found that in a few states, political leaders who backed the abortion bans stood in the way of measuring the consequences. Isn't that charming? They have dismissed committees, slowing down their work. They have weeded out members who were openly critical of the abortion bans and supportive of transparency. Texas has gone as far as to legally prohibit its committee from reviewing deaths that are considered abortion-related. This includes some miscarriage-related deaths. Those are actually key generally in determining maternal mortality, that and cardiac arrest. Anyway, in 2 deaths in Texas, women that ProPublica investigated, one was Portia Ngumezi, and there's a link to her in the newsletter, and Josely Barnica, linked to her stuff in the newsletter, had already miscarried when they were given misoprostol to help complete the process. Now, the committee does not review cases that involve that drug because the drug is also used for abortion. It's actually used for a lot of things. This was reported by committee chair Carla Ortiz, who's a doctor. Her comment was, if they received medication, if they received any procedure, then her committee does not get the records, period. Chris Van Dusen, the spokesperson at the Texas Department of State Health Services, would not say whether Ngumezi's and Barnica's deaths would be reviewed, because they're not going to, of course. Committees are not systematically tracking these key injuries and deaths, delays and denial of procedure, like a D&C, a dilation and curettage, which is used to empty the uterus during miscarriage to avoid hemorrhage and infection. If you don't do that, you have a very high risk of dying. Anyway, the procedures are also used for abortion, and doctors face prison time for violating the restrictions on that. So women have died after they could not access these procedures. The procedures were not done when this is medically accepted practice everywhere. Nevaeh Crane was a teenager whose organs were failing, so she's in serious trouble. She was made to wait an hour and a half for an ultrasound, a second ultrasound, to confirm that the fetus inside her was dead. Amber Thurman suffered for 20 hours while sepsis spread. And, you know, when you have sepsis, you go into sepsis shock without notice, and then death follows very rapidly. So waiting is just, it's just medically defective. Anyway, Barnica was subjected to serious infection risks for 40 hours while the doctors monitored fetal heartbeat until it stopped. They were willing to let her get as close to death as possible and maybe save her, but the fetus was going to die. Anyway, anti-abortion states are delaying looking at maternal mortality data. They're disbanding the committees that were tasked to review and report on the data, and they're punishing members of those committees who object to publicizing the deaths that politicians who are callous and cruel, those who have made these callous and cruel choices for everyone in the state, they don't want to talk about it. Now look, when Texas delayed publishing its maternal mortality rate in 2022, an election year, you can see why they delayed it, then committee member Nikenia Wilson, community advocate, spoke out saying, withholding data that does not make us look good is dishonorably burying these women. The next session, Texas lawmakers passed a bill changing the requirements for the position that Wilson held, effectively removing her from the committee. Got it? You speak up, you're out. State officials appointed Dr. Ingrid Skop, a Texas OBGYN who is the vice president of a prominent anti-abortion organization, to take her place. Charming. Welcome to States' Rights. This is what happens when the federal government stops or is unable to step in. And it is why you want the federal government to step in. I know that under the next administration and extreme court, we are unlikely to see the laws changed at all, but it doesn't mean we have to be quiet about it. P.S. Breaking news, a federal judge in Texas just ruled yesterday that the Biden administration exceeded its authority in a ruling bolstering privacy protection for women seeking abortions and patients receiving gender transition treatments. Charming. We're going to stop that as well in Texas. Texas, they may be able to stop it everywhere because it was a federal judge. Of course, they're just waiting to torment women. It is horrible. Let's take an action. You can't let this stuff stand. Even if they're not going to change it right away, we need to speak out. Let's demand that our members of Congress speak out publicly. We need somebody to do it about the deaths that abortion bans are causing, and publicly demand a vote on the Women's Health Protection Act to make abortion legal nationwide. There's a link in the YouTube description box so you can find your representative, or on your cell phone, send a text message using ResistBot to 50409, and the message is sign, SIGN, space, PXSWSU. That's sign, space, PXSWSU to 50409. If it's the first time you've used it, it's going to ask for your name, address, phone number, email to make sure it gets the right officials. Sometimes it asks, how do you want me to deliver the message? Say email. That one's free. Here's the message. I'm your constituent, and I want to share a ProPublica investigation with you about the state of women's health in states that have banned abortion. Here's a link for you to review their report. The state's bans are delaying treatment and medical attention to women regularly, and women are dying. They are being left to suffer organ failure and sepsis because a fetal heartbeat is present in a fetus that cannot survive. I want you to recognize that this is torture and cruelty and results in death at the hands of legislators who have no medical understanding, no compassion, and are just fine with these women dying. These same legislators are halting maternal mortality committees from actually investigating the causes of the deaths because the politicians don't want the public to know just how cruel and inhuman these abortion ban practices are. This is what happens when abortion is a states' right issue. I want you to speak out against this cruelty and demand the Women's Health Protection Act be brought up for a vote to make abortion care available everywhere in our country. I expect you to speak up long and loud and demand action, and I'll pay attention to what I hear you say. Okay, that's what I've got for you. Down below, you can like, share, subscribe, send me comments. I'll answer them as fast as I can, either here on YouTube or at healthcareadvocacy1@gmail.com. Have a good evening.